Have you ever wondered why over half of all marriages fail? Did your parents divorce? Have you been negatively affected by the D word? You're not alone. And I think I know the reason why it happens. Let's talk about it. Barry Smith here, pastor of 25 years, author, husband, dad, and a guy who had the concept of marriage all messed up for quite a few years. If divorce would have been an option my first 2 to 5 years of marriage, I would have taken it. My wife would have too. I was a youth pastor when I got married, so the church kind of frowned on that option. I think both of our sets of parents would pretty much be against it too. If we don't get a solid foundation started at the very beginning of our marriages, and all relationships for that matter, we're destined to follow in the footsteps of those who've gone before us. And I don't want that for you. There is an answer though. From our previous video, we saw that every meaningful relationship has two boxes, the dreams, desires, and wishes box, and the expectations box. We saw that the minute we move something from the dreams box into the expectations box, the dynamic of the relationship changes, especially in a marriage. There's no room for unconditional love. There's no appreciation. There's no intimacy. Because when our spouse does something that we expect, we just expect it. They're supposed to do whatever it was that they did. Now I realize that there are some exceptions like fidelity and honesty, but most every young person getting married has a laundry list of dreams, desires, and wishes that they have going on and going in their heads into marriage. And all of that is fine. But when we move them into the expectations box, disaster is waiting. Much of this happens when we can change the dynamic of the relationship. We play games to cope with our dysfunctions, just to survive. But that's not God's best for you. Marriage is the most important and intimate relationship that anyone can have besides a relationship with God. Genesis 2:23-24 says, "The man said, 'This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man.' That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh." Now, there's not enough time to research and talk about the intricacies of this passage, but becoming one flesh is sex. It's intimacy. The two become one, and the one is not to be separated. Jesus confirmed this in Matthew 19:4-6. "Haven't you read," he replied, "that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, 'For this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let no one separate.'" The marriage is meant to be a covenant relationship, a bond, a commitment, an undying loyalty, a solemn and binding relationship between two people. But it's not a contract. This is where it can get a little slippery. And this is where confusion can set in. A contract is where one party agrees to do one thing and another party agrees to do another thing. They each have their share to fulfill. You buy a car, the dealership provides the car, and the purchaser provides the money. But a marriage is a covenant where each side provides 100%. Each party agrees to go all in. Each spouse commits to unconditional love. Unconditional. In a covenant, it's an agreement that I will no matter what. It's definitely not a 50-50 relationship. At least that's not the way God meant it to be. In a contract marriage, the first two things to go are romance and intimacy. And that's not good. Do you remember when you were first dating, you couldn't stay away from each other? No need for a contract. This relationship was the beginning of a covenant. But when you settle for a contract marriage, compromising for the sake of peace, it's really just another way of managing expectations and the beginning of the probable end. Because we move our relationship to a debt-debtor relationship. The result is that romance and intimacy and the stuff that makes marriage really great, it evaporates. Another way to express these expectations is, you owe me. You're my wife. You owe me this. You're the husband. You owe me this. And we look at our vows and say, dude, you owe me. You said in front of your dad, blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, well you said in front of your mom, mama's boy, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff you said, it ain't happening. Now I'm holding you to it. Because in a debt-debtor relationship, there's no recognition of unconditional love. There's no room for grace. After all, if you expect something and your spouse gives it to you, How much credit do they get? None. Because that's what they're supposed to do. It's the expectation. Don't expect me to throw a big celebration because you did what you're supposed to do. You're up to zero. You're up to break even. Congratulations. You don't get credit for loving me. You're supposed to do that. Mortgage companies don't write you with long perfumed love letters and with chocolate on it. It says, "Dear Barry, once again, we want to write a thank you for sending in your mortgage payment. Here's a $100 gift card to Outback. We love you." No, they don't do that. I'm just fulfilling my part of the contract. It's what's expected of me. When there's two big me's in the marriage, it squeezes out the potential for unconditional love. Because love is a gift. The only time you get a personalized letter from a debtor is when you miss a payment. You miss enough payments, and you'll get a personal phone call. And that's what happens in some of our marriages. If you do everything right, there's peace, but not a lot of love. But if you mess up, just a little, you'll get some personalized attention, and it's almost always negative. For instance, if you like a neat home, and you come home and your family is scrambling, putting everything away, and you keep this desire in the dreams, desires, and wishes box, and 90% of everything is put away, you're going to appreciate your spouse and kids for trying to fulfill that desire. Way to go, guys. The house looks great. But if you expect it, and you walk in, and a few things are out of place, there's stress, and nobody feels loved or appreciated, and there's no intimacy. Some of you gals are dating a guy, dreaming together, and when you get engaged, everything's great, and he says, "Honey, I'm going to buy you a big house, and I'll own my own business and make a lot of money, and we'll have a white picket fence and 2.4 kids, and it's just going to be great." And you walk down the aisle with all those dreams and desires and wishes, thinking that this is awesome. But then you get married, and later on it doesn't happen. And she moves those dreams, desires, and wishes into the expectation box. And now she's thinking, "I said I do, and he said he would, and I did, and he hasn't. Where's the big house and fence and kids and the business that you promised?" And all of a sudden, a legitimate desire turns into an expectation, and things get ugly. When two big me's are married, unconditional love and intimacy can't be found. Because it's a debt-debtor relationship, all because of what's in the expectations box. And don't get me wrong. We all have legitimate God-given desires to be respected, cherished, to have companionship, to be accepted, to experience love and intimacy, to be desired. All of those are God-given. But some desires only God can fill. But here's the thing. The minute we move desires out of this box and put them on the shoulders of our spouse in the form of an expectation, the dynamic changes, and now they owe you. Then it's all about performance instead of unconditional love. Here's how you know if you've moved the desires to expectations. It's just two simple things: your expression of gratitude and your acts of service. Because we don't express gratitude for things that we've come to expect. Like an employee. That's just his job. He's supposed to do that. The frequency or infrequency of your expressions of gratitude for the little daily routine kinds of things, it tells you in a heartbeat if you've mentally and maybe emotionally transitioned from desire to expectation. Some of you are stay-at-home moms. Maybe you've never looked your husband in the eye and said, "Thanks for allowing me to have one of my dreams come true, to be a stay-at-home mom." Do you appreciate that? The fact that that's happening? Have you ever expressed it? Maybe some of you husbands have a wife like mine. She just gets it all done. You walk in and the laundry's done, dishes, the house, it's all clean, and the meals are great too. It's amazing what my wife Tammy can accomplish in the time that she has available. How many times have I genuinely said thank you? Not enough. Some guys might still think, but isn't that what she's supposed to do? You're in the wrong box, my friend. Expressions of gratitude. How about thanks for shuffling the kids around and preparing the meals? Gals, how about thanks for coming home, let alone coming home on time? Because there's a lot of guys, a lot of spouses that just don't come home. They stay out all night and you don't even know where they are. But you might be thinking, yeah, but I want him home early. He's supposed to be a family man, and I get that. But it's moved from desire to expectation. When that happens, it's going to put your marriage in jeopardy because it's in a debt-debtor relationship and it'll destroy unconditional love. Expressions of gratitude and acts of service. An act of service is like you walking by something around the house that needs to be done, and you know your spouse would normally do that, and you walk on by and go, they'll get it. Like the dishes. You know you've moved from desires to expectations if your acts of service and expressions of gratitude are minimal, which probably means it's all about me. So is it possible to keep everything inside of the box of dreams, desires, and wishes? What would happen if you could keep them all there? Imagine going through your marriage, discovering and meeting your spouse's desires and dreams. That's where unconditional love happens, because it wasn't expected. Intimacy and romance would be fueled. However, expectation erodes intimacy in marriage. The desires box is a covenant saying, I will, even if you won't. It's not easy, but I will, even if you won't. The expectations box is a contract that says, I will, only if you will first. In the next 3 videos, we'll try to get everything out of the expectations box and over to the dreams and desires box. It is possible, and it begins with your answer to this question, this one question. What does your spouse owe you? This question sets you up to get everything out of one box and into the other. What does your spouse owe you? Because the answer to that question tells you what's in the expectations box. And until you know what's in there, you won't know how to move it from expectations to the desires box, the dreams box. What does your spouse owe you? And as always, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel. It helps us get the word out there. I'd really appreciate it. And comment below if you agree and why or why not. And if you dare, comment what your spouse owes you or what you owe your spouse. And if you like our stuff, consider supporting us with a tip on PayPal or a tax-deductible donation at YouChoose.Community. The links are below. So right now, go ahead and hit that thumbs up and share this thing, because no doubt someone you know probably needs to hear this. We'll see you in the next video.